All right. Think I think we are live. Folks, just give me a quick confirmation if you can see me and hear me all right. On chat, just let me know if you can see me and hear me. Great, great. Okay, so awesome. Thank you for the confirmation. All right, so good evening, everyone. I know some of you are saying long time no see. I know I haven't seen you folks in a while. In fact, we had planned a session last week. Unfortunately, I fell sick on that very day, and then I was like sick for a few days, and that's why I couldn't conduct the session. So apologies for that. I know quite a few of you were waiting, and it was kind of last minute. So yeah, apologies for the inconvenience, but here I am today, back with another session, and hopefully it will be a good session today. All right. Okay. So I see quite a few familiar names. It's always great to see that. And I see some new names as well, which is amazing. So, folks, if you're joining these sessions for the first time, I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Jatin. I am a verbal ability coach with 2IIM. So, primarily, I focus on CAT and other competitive exams as well, just the verbal ability section. I have about 18 years of corporate experience. I quit my job with Google last year because I wanted to get into this domain because these are my passions. I'm very passionate about English and I'm very passionate about teaching. So I decided to pursue that full time. And that's why I quit my job last year. And yeah, here I am. As I said, I focus on the verbal ability bit. Apart from that, I'm also involved with interview training, right? So once you clear your CAT, you have your personal interview. So I'm involved with training and conducting mock interviews as well. But verbal ability coaching is my primary responsibility. Okay, great. So if you want a more detailed introduction, you can go back and check the previous sessions, maybe the first session, and then there's a long introduction. I don't want to sort of repeat that and utilize time in that. But good to be here after a break. What we're going to do today is we are going to discuss verbal ability, right? So in the previous sections, and Akib from my team will ping the playlist on chat. There's a playlist for CAT 2020 verbal solutions, right? So you can check that playlist. You'll see the link on chat soon. It has all the sessions that we've done so far. So what we've done so far is we've completed the reading comprehension section for all slots, right? So we've discussed about 12 passages, right, from from CAT 2020 across the 3 slots. So we're done with the RC part. Now this is the first session for verbal ability. So what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss and solve the verbal ability section for CAT 2020 slot 1, right? And when we say verbal ability section, you know what that is, right? There are basically 3 categories there. One is para summary, second is para jumbles, and third is the odd one out, right? So that's what we're going to focus on today. But you can always look at the playlist. We'll send you the link on chat and you can check out all the previous sessions on reading comprehension as well. Okay, amazing. So let's get started in a minute. Before that, just wanted to check with you because we're meeting after some time, and CAT is getting closer and closer. How's your verbal ability prep going on? How are you guys doing with that? On chat, if some of you can tell me how your prep is coming along and what you're doing to prep, that'll be great. Anybody who wants to talk about the verbal ability prep? How's it coming along? There's always a bit of a lag on chat, so I have to, I'll just wait and see if there are any responses coming in. I'm sure there are some people who would like to share about their verbal ability prep journey. How's it going, folks? All right. Oh, great. I'm getting, oh, there's a lag on my chat as well. Okay, so let's see. What are people saying? Mock score shooting up. Very pleased. That's great. Anish, very good to hear that. Harsh, you have a question about how much ideal time should be given to VA. Okay, let's talk about that. Before we start, I'll talk about it. Okay. Bharat, read articles, analyze the new words in it. Accuracy is a problem. One day I get 90 percentile, other day 52. Yeah, so the person who said that, right? You have a very unique ID, 155 GSET 17. See, mock scores fluctuation is very common. That happens a lot. Okay, so don't just think that it's happening with you. It happens with a lot. It happens with me as well. When I do mocks, one mock the score is, in the 90s. The second mock it just slips to, I don't know, 80s, 70s. It happens, right? It fluctuates a lot. But definitely try to analyze if there's a huge gap in your accuracy. Definitely try to analyze. Why is that happening? Is that happening because the test was tough, or is that happening because you used a different strategy, right? So do that root cause analysis to figure out. But also remember that mock scores fluctuation is a common issue, right? It's not an uncommon issue. So don't think that it's just happening with you. Concentrating only for RC, gonna start my verbal ability part. Ananda says that. Okay, so I know. I hear that from quite a few students. Oh, I'm focusing on RC. I'm gonna attack RC first, and then I'm gonna look at VA. I understand that RC is definitely the most important chunk of your exam, but considering now that we are less than 100 days away from CAT, just start your verbal ability prep now. Okay, it can go hand in hand, right? See, reading is something that you'll have to do. It's going to help you for both the sections, right? It's going to help you for RC. It's going to help you for VA as well. But VA, definitely start the prep. Don't ignore verbal ability. Okay, and we'll discuss more on that. See, I know that verbal ability comes with its own challenges, right? You have TETA questions, which are very complex and all of that. But if you prepare for verbal ability, there are high chances many students, because of the prep in the right way for verbal ability, they end up scoring quite well in this section. Okay, so it turns out to be a lucrative section. So what I'm saying is, don't ignore it. Okay, RC is definitely important. It's the most important section. But at the same time, verbal ability, if prepared in the right way, can end up being a lucrative section as well. So now, because we're less than 100 days away, please start if you haven't already. Okay, the idea is to solve a bunch of questions. So for verbal ability, the way you have to prep is you just have to solve as many questions as possible. So solve a lot of para summaries, solve a lot of para jumbles and odd ones out. Of course, keeping your strategy in mind, which we'll discuss a little bit today. The right strategy is also important. But please start preparing for verbal. It's time that you do that, and remember that it can be a lucrative section. Okay, all right. Now there's one question about, I often get this question, how much time should I spend on verbal, right? See, the thing is, I know there are some people out there who will clearly give you a demarcation. That, spend about 28 to 30 minutes on RC and maybe 10 to 12 minutes on, excuse me. Yeah. So some people give you a clear demarcation, right? 28 to 30 minutes on RC, 10 minutes on verbal ability. I don't want to do that because see, it depends on your strength areas. There are some folks, their strength lies with reading comprehension. So if you're one of them, obviously you're going to spend more time, as much time as possible on reading comprehension. There are some folks who are great at verbal ability, but they're not so great at reading comprehension. Now, in that case, they will obviously, the objective will be to spend more time with verbal ability. Now, I'm not saying RC will always consume more time than verbal ability. We're not comparing the two. But whether you have to spend 10 minutes on verbal ability or 12 minutes or 15 minutes or less than 10 is something that you need to take a call on, depending on your strength areas. Right. So if you ask me, the way I approach it is, and again, this is according to my strength areas. So I spend about 28 to 30 minutes on reading comprehension. Okay. And I spend about 10 to 12 minutes on verbal ability. Right. That's a framework I have in mind. But of course, on the test day, depending on the test, I can tweak my strategy. So be ready with that as well. So what I'm saying is, you will have to decide based on strength areas how much time you want to spend on verbal ability. Okay, typically I can tell you what students do is typically they spend about 10 to 12 minutes on verbal ability, right? That's like the average. Okay, but whether you want to spend more than that or less than that, that's your call. Okay, depending on your strength areas. Okay, and also be ready to be a little flexible on the test day, right? Let's say if you can be in a slot where the reading comprehension is incredibly tough, but the verbal ability is very easy, right? Now, in that case, you can decide to spend even 15 minutes on verbal ability if you want, because that's the scoring section and less time on reading comprehension. So be ready to tweak it as well. But yeah, typically I would say it's about 10 to 12 minutes on verbal ability. What I would suggest is give verbal ability a reasonable shot. Okay, don't spend 5 minutes on it. See, 5 minutes on it, it's not going to be enough. At least aim to spend 8 minutes, if not more, on verbal ability, and the remaining you can reserve it for reading comprehension. Okay, all right, great. So folks, let's get started. And I know there are some other questions as well on chat. If there is time at the end, I'll focus on the general questions. Otherwise, I always tell you, you can always comment on the video. So once this live stream ends, right, just go and comment on the video with your question if I've not covered it here, and then I'll reply to it. Okay. The way YouTube works is I cannot tag you based on your chat question. You will have to comment on the video for me to reply to it. Okay, so don't hesitate to do that if your question is not covered. But yes, I'll definitely try to cover those questions at the end. Okay, all right. So let's get started, folks, with today's agenda, which is your verbal ability section. Okay, so see, by now I'm sure you're aware that verbal ability in CAT, okay, has typically 3 sections. Of course, that can change in 2021, but we're looking at 2020, and this has been the structure for some years now. Okay, so hopefully in 21 also it won't change, but you never know. With CAT, they can do some changes, but based on the last few years, this has been the structure, right? So VA has 3 components. It has para summary, okay. It has para jumbles, and it has odd one out or sentence elimination. Okay, these are the 3 sections for verbal ability. Okay, each of these sections, of course, comes with its own strategy. We'll discuss that. So what we'll do today is we'll start with para summary. Okay, then we'll go to para jumbles, and then we'll go to odd one out. Okay, just to sort of maintain that structure. But in CAT, of course, these questions will be mixed. Okay, but today what I've divided this into 3 sections for slot 1, so that we can discuss the strategy, and then hopefully you can get better with every question. So we'll discuss, like in slot 1, we had 3 para summary questions, 3 para jumbles, and 2 odd one out. Okay, so about 8 questions for verbal ability, which was consistent in slot 2 and slot 3 as well. Okay, so let's start with para summary first. All right, great. So what we'll do is I'll show you the question, and then first I want you to attempt it yourself. Okay, there'll be a poll, so you can choose your answer, and then I will discuss the solution and then discuss the strategy, okay, in detail. But let me give you a quick overview of the strategy that I recommend that you follow for para summary. Okay, so see, for para summary, and I won't go into detail because that's not the agenda of this session. We're not going to discuss the strategy in detail, but very quickly, what you should do is there are 3 steps to solving a para summary question. Okay, one is main idea. So you basically read the paragraph that's given to you and you extract the main idea. Okay, you do this with RC all the time. And remember, for reading comprehension, you are sometimes expected to extract the main idea of the entire passage. You folks do that as well. Para summary is just one paragraph. Okay, so it's much easier. It's actually very similar to reading comprehension. Para summary is very similar to reading comprehension. It's the much easier version of reading comprehension because you just have one paragraph as opposed to the whole passage, right? That's why this can be a very lucrative section. Okay, so don't it doesn't make any sense to avoid this, because remember, this is just like your reading comprehension. It's a much easier version, right? You're not going to avoid reading comprehension. Obviously, you can't. As much as you would like to, you can't. So similarly, it doesn't make sense to avoid para summary, right? Remember, it can be a lucrative section. Okay, so first what you do is you read the paragraph and you extract the main idea in your head. Now you can take notes. You can quickly take a note about the main idea, or you can make a mental note as well. I'll leave that to you, right? It's a comprehension technique. Some people, when they quickly write it down, it registers in their brain. Some people are able to take it in their in their head. So do that. But the idea is to extract the main idea. What is the author telling you? What is the author's main idea? What is the author trying to tell you? What is the main point that he's making? So extract the main idea. Then second step is, don't look at the options now. So just first extract the main idea by reading the paragraph. Then look at the options and focus on elimination. This is very important for para summary. Okay, look at the options. After you've extracted the main idea, look at the options and start eliminating them. So basically look for flaws in the options. Okay, you have your main idea, right? You've understood the paragraph. Now look at option A, see if there is a flaw. If there is a flaw, eliminate it, right? So accordingly, go to each option and eliminate it if you see a flaw there. Okay, then invariably what will happen is you'll get stuck with 2 options or 3 options, whatever that is. Okay, or 1 if you're lucky. You see flaws, you just end up with 1. That's your answer. But let's say typically what will happen is you'll end up with 2 options. Then in that case, out of the 2 options, you have to choose the best option. Okay, so out of the remaining options post elimination, choose the option that is the best option. Now, what do we mean by the best option? The option that gives you the best possible summary of the paragraph. Okay, so out of the 2 options, let's say it's A and B. So choose which one gives you a better summary of the paragraph, which one does a better job at summarizing the paragraph, right? And then you choose that option. So this is key here. Elimination is something which is very important for para summary. So there's a clear strategy for it. Okay, so extract the main idea, eliminate, and then choose the better option out of the remaining eliminated options. Okay, all right. So and yeah, it's very lucrative. Typically in CAT, what happens is you get 3 para summary. 2 are manageable. 2 are quite manageable. 1 might be very tricky. They typically throw in a very tricky one. Tricky one, when I say, is that the paragraph content is cryptic to understand. You can't make head or tail of the paragraph, so you can't solve it. But 2 are very manageable in terms of content. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you follow the strategy clearly and if you pay attention, you can get 2 questions right out of 3. So you attempt 2, you get 2. That is 6 marks in your bag already. Okay, so it's a very lucrative section. Don't ignore it. Remember, it's an easier version of RC. Okay, so it makes no sense to ignore it. All right. Okay, so let's get started. Read the question, option, answer the poll, and then we'll discuss it. Okay, let's get started. Go for it. The poll will be up, so you can choose the answer in the poll. You have about a minute and a half, so take your time. Don't rush. All right, so please answer on the poll, folks, whenever you're ready. Take your time. All right, we'll end the poll in 30 seconds. So make sure to vote. Yeah, don't message the answer on chat, just for the so that everybody gets a chance. Make sure to vote in the poll, okay, for the para summary questions. And we'll be ending in 5 seconds, folks. So just wrap it up. Make sure you put in your vote. All right, so the results should be up any second now. Great. Okay, so the results are in. All right, so 35% of you have chosen alpha. Okay, so that's the most popular one, a popular option that you've chosen, but it's close. So 35% of you have chosen alpha, and 28% of you have chosen 28% of you have chosen delta. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, in the slide it's 1, 2, 3, 4, but yeah, just correspond that with ABCD. So 35% of you have chosen alpha, which is 1, and 28% of you have chosen delta, 21% of you have chosen bravo, and then Charlie is the last one with 48%. Okay, so we have A, B, C, and D. Okay, so don't get confused with that. Usually I have ABCD. This time for some reason it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, all right. So let's see. Let's now look at this question and we'll discuss each of these options. Okay. So first step, we have to extract the main idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the paragraph. Okay, and then I'm going to extract the main idea. See if that matches with the main idea that you extracted as well. Okay. All right. So what does it say? For nearly a century. Okay, my voice is cracking. Okay, is it? I wonder why. Is it better now? Is it better now, folks? My voice? It's okay now? All right. Okay. Maybe that was just a temporary issue, but let me know if that happens again. Okay. All right. So let's read this. For nearly a century, most psychologists have embraced one view of intelligence. Okay. And what is the view? Individuals are born with more or less intelligence potential, IQ. This potential is heavily... Sorry, I'm just going to read this again. One second. Okay. For nearly a century, most psychologists have embraced one view of intelligence. Individuals are born with more or less intelligence potential, or IQ. This potential is heavily influenced by heredity and difficult to alter. Okay. Experts in measurement can determine a person's intelligence early in life, currently from paper and pencil measures, perhaps eventually from examining the brain in action or even scrutinizing his or her genome. Okay, so this talks about the view of intelligence that psychologists have embraced for a long time, for nearly a century. Okay, so it's a very long-standing view. Okay, the conventional view that psychologists have held about intelligence. Okay, recently criticism of this conventional wisdom has mounted. Okay, so this is where the paragraph is taking a turn. So it talks about the long-standing view, but then it says criticism of this conventional wisdom has mounted. Okay, so it's being criticized now, and the conventional view. Okay, all right. So next paragraph. Biologists ask if speaking of a single entity called intelligence is coherent. Okay, and question the validity of the measures used to estimate heritability of a trait in humans, who, unlike plants or animals, are not conceived and bred under controlled conditions. Okay, so we have a psychologist's view, right, which is explained here. The conventional wisdom, long standing for nearly a century, right, which says that you're born with intelligence, it's very difficult to change it, and the psychologists believe they can measure it as well based on heredity, right? So they're saying that it's you sort of inherit it from your parents, from your ancestors, and it's inborn, and we can measure it using a certain process. Okay, so that's the psychologist's view. But then it says criticism of this conventional wisdom is mounted. So biologists, now there's another entity coming in. So biologists are criticizing this long-standing view. And why are they criticizing it? There are two reasons for criticizing it. One they are saying is, ask if speaking of a single entity called intelligence is coherent. Okay, so this is one reason. They're questioning this, right? The question is that, is it right to consider intelligence as a single entity? Right? That's the first criticism that biologists have. And second, what they're questioning is, they're questioning the validity of measures used to estimate heritability. So psychologists are saying it's a heritable trait and we can measure it. But biologists are questioning the validity of the measures used to estimate heritability of a trait in humans because of the reason of plants and animals. Okay? All right. So if I were to ask you, what's the main idea of this paragraph? See, the main idea here is, I know the first paragraph, and again, it's broken into two. I know the first section talks about the conventional view of intelligence, but that's not the main idea. The main idea is that the conventional view or the conventional view of intelligence is being criticized now, is being questioned now. That's the main idea. Think about it. The first paragraph is, the first section is context, but the main substance is that this is being criticized. And why is it being criticized? For two reasons. One, they're questioning if intelligence can be considered as a single entity. And second, they're questioning the validity of measures used to estimate heritability, right? So the main idea is that your conventional view of intelligence is questioned, or is being questioned. Okay, that's the main idea, and it's being questioned for two reasons. One, the single entity, okay, and second is the heritability, estimating or estimation of heritability. And why are they saying it? Because the conventional view talks about that it's inherited, it's based on heredity, right? That's the main idea here. So yeah, so just keep that in mind. The main idea is not the conventional view. The main idea is that the conventional view is being criticized for two reasons, and what are those two reasons? That's the main idea. Okay, so we've extracted the main idea. Now let's look at the options. So number one is done. Now we have to look at elimination. That's number two. Okay, so let's start with, we'll go in order. So we'll look at option A. Biologists have questioned the long-standing view that intelligence is a single entity and the attempts to estimate its heritability. Okay, now when you're reading the option, read it very carefully. Okay, read each and every word, and we have to pick flaws. Remember, we are eliminating at this stage, so look for flaws. So is there a flaw in 1? Biologists have questioned the long-standing view that intelligence, okay, they have definitely questioned the long-standing view. I'm breaking up the option and I'm looking at the flaws. So have biologists questioned the long-standing view? Yes, they have. Okay, that intelligence is a single entity. Okay, this is definitely one of the reasons why they're questioning. And the attempts to estimate its heritability. Okay, this seems okay, right? It sort of summarizes, it does a good job of summarizing as well, right? Our main idea. This is our main idea and does a good job of it. That I don't see any flaws in 1. So I'm going to hold on to it. Of course, we have to look at other options before we decide. So let's hold on to it. Okay, let's look at Bravo. Biologists have questioned the view. Okay, again, questioned the view is fine. They have that intelligence is a single entity. Great. And the ways in which it is inherited. Okay, so they questioned the view, correct. Intelligence is a single entity, correct. And the ways in which what is inherited. Are biologists questioning the ways in which intelligence is inherited? Are they questioning the process of inheritance? Or are they questioning the estimation of heritability? Think about this, right? These are two different things, and that's why you have to look at flaws. They are questioning whether it's a single entity, and they're questioning how heritability is estimated. The factors that are taken into consideration to estimate heritability. But here the option says the ways in which what is inherited. So the option is talking about the process of inheritance. The paragraph is talking about the estimation of heritability. These are two different things. Okay, so this is a flaw, folks. This right here is a flaw, the third section, and it's good to always break it up, by the way. You can do that as well. So there is a flaw here. Okay, Bravo has a flaw. So Bravo cannot be a right answer because it's a flaw. So I'm going to remove Bravo out of the equation. Let's look at Charlie. Biologists have criticized, okay, that biologists have criticized is fine. We're talking about criticism, so that's okay. That conventional wisdom that individuals are born with more or less intelligence potential. One second. Biologists have criticized that conventional wisdom is that individuals are born with more or less intelligence potential. Okay, why are the biologists criticizing it? Based on two factors: single entity and estimation of heritability. Where are those points here? Okay, there it says they have criticized the conventional wisdom, which is correct, that individuals are born with more or less intelligence potential. Are they questioning the fact that this is an inborn trait? Are they questioning that? They're questioning it for two reasons. They're not questioning that intelligence is, they're not saying that intelligence is not inborn, right? They're questioning whether it's a single entity or estimation of heritability. Here it doesn't talk about that and talks about the inborn fact, which is not covered in the passage. Okay, so this is also a flaw. So C is gone. Let's look at Delta. Biologists have started questioning psychologists' view of intelligence as a measurable, immutable characteristic of an individual. Interesting. Okay, so correct. They're questioning psychologists' view of intelligence. This is fine. As a measurable, immutable characteristic of an individual. Okay, so measurable can be connected to the paragraph is talking about heritability, the measures taken to estimate heritability. Okay, the paragraph specifically says that. The option just says measurable. Okay, so it's a little generic. Okay, and also, what does immutable mean? Immutable means that's something that cannot be repeated, or that's something that cannot be duplicated. So basically the paragraph says that potential is heavily influenced by heredity and it's difficult to alter. So once you have intelligence, you're born with it and it's difficult to alter that. Okay, immutable means that's something which cannot be changed. Okay, are biologists questioning that? What are biologists questioning? There are two very specific things that they're questioning: single entity and estimation of heritability. They're not questioning the immutability of IQ or intelligence. They're not questioning that, okay, this trait is So psychologists are saying that it's immutable and biologists are questioning. They're not questioning that. The paragraph doesn't talk about it. And also the paragraph says it's difficult to alter. Immutable means cannot be altered. Cannot be altered is different from difficult to alter. Okay, that's also a flaw. And the bigger flaw is that it doesn't talk about these two options or these two aspects. Okay, so that's why delta is not your answer. The correct answer is alpha. Okay, all right. So folks, so this is what you have to do. You have to look at the main idea. You have to extract the main idea, and then you have to look at eliminations. Bravo, Charlie, and Delta have flaws. That's why we've eliminated it, and we're remaining with alpha, which is the correct answer. Okay, any questions here? Okay, I'm sorry, my voice is breaking. I don't know why that's happening. I'll try not to move too much. Maybe that's why it's happening. But yeah, any questions on this, folks, or is this clear? All right, great. So I know quite a few had chosen delta. Okay, do you understand that delta was, yeah, exactly, delta was a trap. You're right. Okay, why not force her? Okay, again, so let's look at that. See, what does delta say? Biologists have started questioning psychologists' view of intelligence, which is fine, as a measurable, immutable characteristic of an individual. So what this option is saying is that biologists are questioning whether intelligence is measurable and whether intelligence is immutable. Immutable means something that cannot be repeated, or something that cannot be copied, or something that cannot be changed, is what immutable means. First of all, your passage is saying that it's difficult to alter. Difficult to alter is different from cannot be altered. Immutable means cannot be altered. Okay, that's one. And two, biologists are questioning the view on two factors. It's very clear. They've clearly mentioned why are they questioning it. I know there is a sentence which says criticism has mounted, but why has the criticism mounted? Because of two factors: single entity and validity of measures used to estimate heritability. You have to focus on these two factors. That's why they're questioning it. They're not questioning the immutability of intelligence, right? Okay, so that's the problem here. Delta is the issue because they're not questioning the immutability. They're questioning single entity and heritability, which are covered in alpha. Okay, biologists are questioning the long-standing view that intelligence is a single entity, which is number one, and the attempts to estimate its heritability, which is the second part. Okay, so that's why alpha is the correct option. Now see, what will happen is some of you can say that, okay, the paragraph talks about questioning the validity of measures used to estimate heritability, whereas the option is just saying attempts to estimate its heritability. Yes, they are slightly different. You'll always have options like that. You won't have options that clearly tell you the same thing that's mentioned in the paragraph. Yes, attempts to estimate its heritability is different, slightly different from the measures used to estimate heritability. But remember, this is the best option that we have. It comes closest to the paragraph. So if I have to compare A and D, okay, in this case, D has a flaw. It talks about immutability, right, which the biologists are not questioning. That's why we're removing D. A doesn't really have a flaw. A comes very close to the right option. So out of the four options available, A is the best option. Okay, all right. Okay, folks, let's carry on. Let's go to the next question. Now remember the strategy in the next question: extract the main idea, eliminate, and then out of the eliminated options, choose the best option possible. Okay, all right, great. Let's move on. Okay, so have a look at this and then choose your solution in the poll. Okay, we'll end the poll in 30 seconds, folks. Okay, ending in about 5 seconds. Please put in your vote. If you're watching the stream, definitely vote, okay? Because the more votes, the better, because then I get an idea of where your pain points are, okay? So definitely vote. It's anonymous, so don't worry, right? Even if it wasn't anonymous, you shouldn't worry, okay, because we're all learning. So yeah, ending in about a few seconds, and then we'll discuss. Great. So we have the answer. Okay, so this time there's a clear majority. Last time it was split. This time it's a clear majority, which can either be a good sign or a bad sign. Okay, so we'll see what it is. Hopefully it's a good sign. Okay, so Delta is a clear winner. 75% of you, that's overwhelming. 75% of you have chosen Delta, okay, as your correct answer. Then we've got Alpha, and we've got Charlie. Okay, and then we've got Bravo. Okay, so but 75% has gone with Delta. So let's just quickly look at that. Okay, looks like there is unanimity here, but let's see whether that's the correct answer. Okay, all right. Interesting paragraph, right? What does it say? For years, movies and television series like crime scene investigation paint an unrealistic picture of the science of voices. Okay. What are the signs of voices? Hopefully that will become clear in the subsequent lines. In the 1994 movie Clear and Present Danger, an expert listens to a brief recorded utterance and declares that the speaker is Cuban, aged 35 to 45, educated in the eastern United States. The recording is then fed to a supercomputer that matches the voice to that of a suspect, concluding that the probability of correct identification is 90%. It's very high, right? Okay, all right. So what is it saying so far? So it says that it talks about the science of voices, the science behind voices. And it says for years, movies and television series like CSI, which is a television series, has painted an unrealistic picture of the science of voices. And then it gives you an example of this movie, Clear and Present Danger. Okay. Where the expert listens to a brief utterance, makes a certain conclusion, feeds that to a supercomputer, and the supercomputer actually matches that to a suspect with 90% probability, very high probability. So they seem to be very sure about this whole process. Okay, all right. This sequence sums up a good number of misimpressions about forensic phonetics. Sorry, I'm going to repeat this. This sequence sums up a good number of misimpressions about forensic phonetics, which have led to errors in real life justice. Okay. Indeed, that movie scene exemplifies the so-called CSI effect, the phenomena in which judges hold unrealistic expectations of the capabilities of forensic science. Okay, interesting. So what is the main idea here? Okay, is the main idea that what happened in the 1994 movie Clear and Present Danger, is that the main idea? No, that can't be your main idea. That's just an example that they've given, right? The 1994 movie Clear and Present Danger is just an example. That is not your main idea. The main idea is about the unrealistic expectations of the capabilities of forensic science. Okay, science of voices, forensic science, right? We're talking about that. So it talks about, see, first it says, in the beginning it says, movies and television series paint an unrealistic picture of the science of voices. Okay, so it talks about this unrealistic picture. Then it ends by saying in which judges hold unrealistic expectations. Okay, so this has to be a part of the main idea, not because it occurred twice, right? But there is a common sort of thread of thought here. They're talking about unrealistic expectations of forensic science. Okay, and where are these unrealistic expectations coming from? So these judges, okay, these law court judges, Supreme Court, High Court, whatever, they have unrealistic expectations of this science. And where are they getting these unrealistic expectations from? What is causing them to have unrealistic expectations? The movies and television series. Okay, like CSI, like Clear and Present Danger. So the movies and television series, because they are painting this unrealistic picture, it's actually driving judges to have unrealistic expectations of the capabilities of foreign science, right? It may be a little hard to believe, but you know, like art, movies do have a major influence. And in this case, you can see a very drastic example of that, where the television series and movies, because of the picture that they paint, are influencing judges to have unrealistic expectations of the capabilities of forensic science. So the main idea here, folks, is we are talking about judges and we're talking about unrealistic expectations of forensic science. That is the main idea. And what's causing the unrealistic expectations? These unrealistic expectations are being caused because of movies and television. Okay, that's the main idea. So the unrealistic expectations and what's causing the unrealistic expectation, that sums up your main idea. Okay, all right. Let's look at all the options now. So alpha 1, right? Voice recognition has started to feature prominently in crime scene intelligence investigations, okay, because of movies and television series. Is that what the paragraph is saying? That voice recognition is featuring in real life crime scene investigations because of movies and television series? Is the paragraph saying that, okay, because of movies and television series, now voice recognition is being used in real life as well? That is not the influence that we're talking about. The influence is around unrealistic expectations. The influence is not about usage. Okay, so this is a flaw. This cannot be a correct answer. Okay, movies and television series is not causing real life investigations to use voice recognition. So this is not your correct answer. There's a clear flaw there. Okay, we are eliminating based on flaws. Let's look at Bravo. Voice recognition, as used in many movies to identify criminals, has been used to identify criminals in real life also. Okay, is this what your paragraph is telling you? That because what this option is saying is voice recognition is being used in movies to identify criminals and it's being used in real life to identify criminals as well. That is not the main idea of the passage. The main idea is around unrealistic expectations. So option B completely misses that point. It doesn't talk about expectations at all, right? So this is a flaw. This is completely sort of missing the whole essence of the passage. Okay, paragraph. Let's look at Charlie. Although voice recognition is often presented as evidence in legal cases, its scientific basis can be shaky. Okay, this is an interesting option. Although voice recognition is often presented as evidence in legal cases, its scientific basis can be shaky. All right. So the first part is true. Voice recognition is being presented as evidence in legal cases. But is the science behind voice recognition shaky? Think about it. Is the paragraph saying that the science behind this voice recognition is shaky, is not correct, is not accurate? Is it talking about the science? No. The problem that the paragraph is talking about is the unrealistic expectations that judges have. The problem is with the judges. The problem is with the people. They're getting influenced by TV and movies. The problem is not with the science behind voice recognition. Okay, so there is no sort of basis for this second point. Its scientific basis can be shaky. So we can eliminate this as well. Now we're left with only one option. Let's see if that's the correct one. Movies and televisions have led to the belief, okay, that movies and televisions have led to the belief, which seems correct, which is what we have, that the use of forensic phonetics in legal investigations is robust and foolproof. Is this correct? It is correct. Movies and televisions are leading you to believe that this is great. It's robust, it's foolproof, it's very accurate. Unrealistic expectations, which is what your judges have. So clearly here, 75% of you chose that. I'm very happy. Delta is the correct option. Okay. All right. Now I hope you can see how I'm doing this, right? You extract the main idea, then you look for flaws and you start eliminating. And then if whatever options you remain, you are stuck with at the end, you choose the option that gives you the better answer, the better summary, or captures the essence of the paragraph in a better way. Okay, is this clear? I think this should be clear because 75% of you chose that. So I'm hoping this is clear. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, so I'm really good that you got this right. Let's look at the third one. Now the third one is a little tricky. I would say out of all the three that came in slot one, the third one was the trickiest. Okay, so take your time and go for it. Okay, Purav, you have a quick question here. So 3 and 4, can you explain again? Okay, see Purav, 3 has a, what does 3 say? Okay, Purav has a question of between 3 and 4. So Purav, let's look at 3. Break it up. Okay, always break it up. Although voice recognition is often presented as evidence in legal cases, this is okay. Okay, its scientific basis can be shaky. Okay, what is the paragraph saying? The paragraph is saying that judges have unrealistic expectations with forensic science or voice recognition. Okay, right. Okay, actually it's talking about forensic science. This option is talking about voice recognition. This option is a little narrow as well, but that's okay. Let's leave that. Okay, the option is saying that the scientific basis can be shaky, the scientific basis of voice recognition. That is the problem according to this option. But the problem according to the paragraph is with the expectations that people have from the science. The problem is not with the scientific basis. See, if had the passage said that, okay, there is voice recognition, the voice recognition is not scientific enough. Or let's say the paragraph says research proves that the scientific basis behind voice recognition is not completely accurate. Something on those lines, right? The paragraph is not questioning the scientific basis behind voice recognition. It is talking about the unrealistic expectations that people have. So the problem is with the people. They are getting influenced by movies and TVs, the judges, and that's why they have unrealistic expectations. So the problem is with the people. The problem is not with voice recognition according to the paragraph. Okay, and the option basically presents as if the problem is with voice recognition. It doesn't talk about the people aspect at all. Okay, so that's why 3 is not the correct answer and 4 is the correct answer. Okay, so Purav, I hope that was clear, but if it's not clear, you can always, we can tackle this at the end, or you can put in a comment and I'm more than happy to have that discussion with you. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at this one. So yeah, this is a little tricky, folks. Take your time. Read the paragraph carefully, slowly, extract the main idea, and then look at the options. Okay, go for it. Okay, the poll is up. You can choose your answer. Take your time with this. I'll give you a little bit of extra time. It's a little tricky, this one, out of the 3. When I say tricky, the content of the paragraph is a little tricky. So go for it and then we'll discuss it. Some of you are incredibly fast. Like I see votes coming in like left and right the moment the poll is up. It's a good thing, but I hope the speed is not coming at the cost of accuracy, right? So accuracy is important. Take your time. Like of course in the exam you'll have a minute, maximum 2 minutes you should devote to a VA question. So, but still, at least a minute. Take your time and then choose the right option. Make sure you go through all the options. Okay. All right, folks. So let's end this. We'll end the poll in 30 seconds. Okay. So yeah, just put in your vote now. You must have read the paragraph. So make sure to put in your vote. I want as many votes as possible. I don't like it when people don't engage. Okay, so it's always great to have engagement. Just vote. Okay, just vote and then we'll discuss it. Let's end this in 30 seconds. All right, great. Let's end this now, folks, in the next 10 seconds. Okay, so just punch in your vote and we will discuss it. All right, I'm waiting for the poll results now. Great. Okay, I was expecting this. Oh, great. We have 67 votes, which is good. Let's keep up the momentum. Okay, I completely get it. Oh, Srihari, the poll didn't pop up for you. Maybe that was just a technical glitch at your end. It sometimes happens. It wasn't popping up for me as well. Maybe that's just a YouTube issue, Srihari. But I'm sorry about that. But hopefully, you have your answer ready, and then we can discuss it. Okay. All right. Okay, folks, I know this was, I told you, right? This was a tricky one. So as I said, typically in CAT, what we've seen is out of 3 para summaries, 2 are manageable, right? The third one gets a little tricky with the content and the options and stuff like that. But if you can get 2 out of 3 right, again, I'm not saying, no, what I'm saying is you attempt 2, of course, you'll have to be intelligent to sort of determine what question you're going to attempt and what question you're going to leave. But typically you have 3 questions, right? Let's say if you attempt 2 and get 2 right without any negative marking, that's great. Okay. Let's say even if you attempt 1 and get 1 right, that's still 3 marks, right? But what I'm saying is 6 marks in the para summary section is manageable. And just be intelligent. If there is a very difficult paragraph that you're not able to understand, you read the paragraph and you're not able to make head or tail. I was in slot 3 in 2020, and when we discuss slot 3, I'll talk about it. There was one paragraph, and I'll be honest enough to say I didn't understand the paragraph at all. I had limited time and I read it like twice and I didn't get it. I was like, okay, I'm not going to take a chance. So if you're not getting the paragraph at all, don't take a chance. But 2 out of 3 are typically manageable. Okay. All right. So, yeah, so I'll see a lot of like chat discussion, right? The super confusing options 1 and 4 are basically the same. So yeah, they've done a very the question setter has done a pretty good job of making this question tricky. This question belongs to the streets. Okay, Devansh says that. All right, let's look at it. So let's try to understand the paragraph first. See whether your main idea matches with my main idea. That's the first step. Okay, follow that strategy. Then it really helps. Okay. All right. So Jayant has already put in his main idea. Jayant, I'll check whether that matches with mine. Okay. Let's look at this. As Soviet power declined, okay, the world became to some extent multipolar, and Europe strove to define an independent identity. Okay. All right. What a journey Europe has undertaken to reach this point. It had in every century changed its internal structure and invented new ways of thinking about the nature of international order. Now, at the culmination of an era, Europe, in order to participate in it, felt obliged to set aside the political mechanisms through which it had conducted its affairs for 3.5 centuries. Oh, Interesting. Okay, so clearly the paragraph is talking about Europe, right? You can get that sense. It's focusing on Europe. Okay, so it's talking about changes in Europe, but by this time you should be able to determine that. So Europe is changing, right? And why is it changing? It says in the beginning, it says as Soviet power declined, the world became to some extent multipolar, and Europe strove to define an independent entity. So here you have a reason as to why Europe is changing. Okay, and it's also saying that it had in every century changed its internal structure. So Europe has been changing its internal structure in every century. But then it says in the next sentence, now the culmination of an era, Europe, in order to participate in it, felt obliged to set aside the political mechanisms through which it had conducted its affairs for 3.5 centuries. So it has been changing its internal structure, but looks like it now, with the whole Soviet power declining and the world becoming multipolar, Europe is going for a very huge change, right? Because it says that, right? In order to participate in it, in spite of changing, right, at regular intervals, it felt obliged to set aside the political mechanism. So it has set aside what has been working for them for the past 3.5 centuries, and it's embracing itself to go for a big change. That's the idea that I'm getting from the paragraph so far. Okay, all right, let's carry on. Impelled also by the desire to cushion the emergent unification of Germany, the new European Union established a common currency in 2002 and a formal political structure in 2004. Okay, so again, it's talking about Europe, and it's specifically now talking about European Union. Okay, it proclaimed a Europe united, whole, and free, adjusting its differences by peaceful mechanisms. Okay, interesting. So clearly, the paragraph is talking about Europe. Okay, and it's talking about a big change that is happening in Europe. We agree with that? Okay. And what is this change? Towards the end, it clarifies the change as well, right? It says the new European Union established a common currency in 2002 and a formal political structure. So the change, the big change that we're talking about is there are two aspects to this change. One is common currency across Europe, and a formal political structure in 2004 again applies to the entire Europe. So Europe sort of became a united entity, right? Is what the passage is saying. So huge change for Europe, two aspects, currency and a formal political structure. And why is this change happening? The first reason is Soviet power declining and the world becoming multipolar. That's the first reason. And there is a second reason as well, the emergent unification of Germany. So those are the two reasons that is causing Europe to change. Okay, so what is the main idea here? The main idea, and again, in very simple words, I would say, okay, you have a big change in Europe. Okay, what is this change all about? There are two aspects. One is common currency, okay, and the second is a formal political structure across Europe. Across Europe. So common political structure, formal political structure across Europe. And what is causing the change? So these are the aspects of the change. So you have a cause effect, right? What are the causes for this change? The effect is the change, but what are the causes? Multipolar world, okay, the world becoming multipolar, right? And the emergent unification of Germany. Those are the two reasons for this big change in Europe. Okay, in terms of currency, in terms of political structure. Okay, all right, so let me look at chat here quickly. I know some of you said that. Jen said Europe lowered its economic heterogeneity only for unification of Germany and the establishment of a formal structure, not to adapt itself. Okay, Jen, I'm going through your statement. You're saying not to adapt itself to an emerging multipolar world. That is wrong. Europe is trying to adapt to a multipolar world. Okay, so maybe that's a typo, I don't know, but think about it. So you are right in one aspect, but the second one is a little wrong. Okay, all right, so folks, I hope you got the main idea. This is the main idea. Okay, let me know in chat if your main idea was different. The main idea is focusing on the big change in Europe. Okay, what are the changes and what is causing the change? That is the main idea. Okay, all right. Now let's look at the options. So if you got the main idea correct, that's half of the battle won. Now we have to choose options, but let me know in chat if your main idea was different. Okay, let's look at alpha now. By the way, what were your answers? I didn't even go through that. Oh, great. So alpha, 1 second. Okay, then Charlie, okay. Okay, so alpha and Charlie have 26% equal. Bravo is also very, very close. Okay, so, and then Delta is 20%. So actually they're all quite close. They're all in 20s, but definitely the answer that you guys went with was alpha and Charlie. Okay, so let me just write this to avoid any confusion. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Charlie, and then let me see, Bravo. Yes, yeah, perfect. Okay, so quite close, but alpha and Charlie were correct options. Now let's look at this. Now we are going to eliminate and look for flaws. Okay, when you're looking at these options, try to break up these options and then see if there is a flaw or not. That's also another good way of doing this. Okay, all right, what does option alpha say? Let's look at alpha. That was one of your first top answers. Europe has consistently changed in keeping with the changing world order. Okay, let's break it up. Is this correct? It is correct. Europe has consistently changed in keeping with the changing world order. That's definitely a point in the passage, okay, in the paragraph, where it says that it had in every century changed its internal structure. It's not a part of our main idea, but it's a point, so it's okay. Europe has consistently changed in keeping with the changing world order, and that has culminated in United Europe. Interesting. Now, what does this option say? The option is saying that Europe has consistently changed in keeping with the changing world order, which is correct. And that has culminated in a united Europe. Is that the reason for Europe being united? So Europe has gone through a major change. Europe has come together. We did talk about that in the main idea. Okay. But what is the reason for this change? Is the reason for united Europe, is it that just because Europe has been changing in the past consistently, now that has culminated in a united Europe? So historically it's been changing, and this is the main reason why it's now coming together as a united Europe. Is that the reason? We clearly had the reasons in main idea, right? The reasons, but there were two reasons: the world becoming multipolar, Soviet power declining, you can take that as well, and unification of Germany. Those are the two reasons. The main reason for Europe coming together is not because it has been changing consistently in the past. That is not the reason for it coming together. Okay, so this option has a flaw. I know it looks like a very attractive option, but it's designed as a trap. It says, and that has culminated in a united Europe. It basically says, because of its consistency in change, that is why this united Europe has happened. That is too simplistic. That is not why it has happened. It has happened because of the world becoming multipolar and unification of Germany. So here the flaw is this part. Okay, and doesn't even do a good job of summarizing the main idea. So alpha is gone. Okay, I hope you're getting this. All right, let's look at Bravo. The establishment of a formal political structure in Europe. Okay, was there an establishment of a formal political structure in Europe? Yes, absolutely yes. Okay, was hastened by the unification of Germany and the emergence of a multipolar world. Very attractive option according to our main idea. Okay, it talks about the change, which is establishment of a formal political structure, and it gives you the reasons as well. It was hastened by the unification of Germany, okay, and the multipolar world, both of which would be covered. Okay, it misses out on the common currency bit because the change was two aspects, right? It was common currency and formal political structure. Fine, it misses out on that, but still, you know, we have to look at flaws right now. Does it have a flaw? Was it hastened? Now, hastened basically means that what the option is saying is these two factors, unification of Germany and the emergence of a multipolar world, hastened this change in Europe. Is that what the passage is saying? Does the paragraph talk about the change being hastened or the change being sped up because of these two reasons? This makes it appear that, okay, Europe was planning a change, but maybe they were planning a change in the next 10 years, but they had to do it in the next 2 years because of these two reasons. Does the passage talk about hastening the change? The paragraph doesn't talk about hastening the change. The paragraph just says these are the reasons for the change. It doesn't say these reasons hasten the change. Okay, that's why you have to be really critical. You have to use your critical skills here. Okay, read each and every, break it up, read each and every word, and then look for flaws. They will throw in one word, and then that will be the flaw. So you have to be very careful when you're reading it. The hastening part is the problem here. Okay, so yeah, this doesn't seem like the correct option. Okay, let's look at Charlie. But you know what? Okay, this doesn't seem like the correct option, but if there's no better option, we can come back to it. So let's hold on to it. Okay, Europe has consistently changed its internal structure, okay, which is true, to successfully adapt to the changing world order. Okay, I don't see a flaw in this option. Europe has consistently changed its internal structure to successfully adapt to the changing world order. This is one sentence, right? This is talking about this sentence here. It had in every century changed its internal structure, invented new ways of thinking about the nature of international order. Okay, but is this the main idea? Does it talk about what changed? Does it talk about what caused the change? No. All it's saying is it's picking out one line of the paragraph and it's saying it's consistently changed its internal structure to successfully adapt to the changing world order. There is no flaw in this statement according to the paragraph, but this is not your main idea. This is not a summary. This doesn't capture the essence of the paragraph. Okay, so that's why we're going to rule this out. Okay, now we're left with B and D, Bravo and Delta. Just give me 1 second. Okay, Europe has chosen to lower political and economic heterogeneity. Okay, what does this mean? Chosen to lower political and economic heterogeneity. Heterogeneity means difference. Homogeneity means the same thing. Okay. Now Europe has different countries. When it says has chosen to lower political and economic heterogeneity, so that means it is trying to bring in some sort of consistency. Okay. So you have different parts of Europe, okay, having different political and economic policies. It is choosing to lower the heterogeneity. That means it's trying to establish a standard. It's trying to make it the same. Okay. All right. Which is connected to uniting Europe, right? So it's not wrong for the paragraph. In order to adapt itself to an emerging multipolar world. Okay, so it's talking about the change, which is lowering the political and economic heterogeneity, and it's talking about the reason for the change. Why is it doing that? In order to adapt itself to an emerging multipolar world. Doesn't talk about unification of Germany. Okay, that's fine. It doesn't talk about it, misses out on that. But it does talk about multipolar world, and it sort of captures the sense in the sense that, okay, this is the effect and this is the cause, right? So here, although it's incomplete, I don't see a flaw here. So now we're left with, I'm just going to erase this. We're left with Bravo and Delta. Okay, which one would you choose? There is a flaw here. Hastened is very questionable. Delta doesn't have a flaw. Delta doesn't talk about Germany. It misses out on that point, but there is no flaw. So out of B and D, I would go with D as the best option. Okay, I know I gave you a long explanation for this, but I hope you got it, right? It's a tricky one, and Delta is the correct answer. So my suggestion here would be break up the options and then look for flaws and eliminate the ones that have flaws. Okay, all right. Okay, any questions here, folks? I know some of you said that you didn't understand anything in the beginning. I hope you understood it now. Is it clear now? I know I gave you a very long explanation, but I just want to make sure that you get it. Any questions, folks? Somebody said it feels like a thriller movie. Oh, okay. I hope my explanation made it feel exciting, which is a good thing. I know it was a long explanation, but I hope it was a exciting explanation. Okay, Ziptroid says, can you explain Charlie? Okay, see, Charlie Ziptroid, sorry, I'm calling you Ziptroid because that's your ID. But Charlie says Europe has consistently changed its internal structure to successfully adapt to the changing world order. Okay, what is the main idea of this paragraph? The problem with this option is that there is no flaw in this option. But the problem is this is not the main idea. It doesn't, if I tell you, okay, does this option do a great job of summarizing the paragraph? It doesn't, because Charlie doesn't talk about the changes, which is common currency and formal political structure, and it doesn't talk about what caused the changes, which is multipolar world and unification of Germany. It just gives you a generic statement. It has consistently changed its internal structure to successfully adapt to the changing world order. It's a very generic statement, doesn't capture the essence of the paragraph, and that's why Charlie is not the right answer. Okay, between Charlie and Delta, okay, Delta is a clear winner. Delta does a great job of capturing the sense. Charlie is very generic. Okay, Arun says lower political heterogeneity. Yeah, okay. So see, heterogeneity is, see, when we're talking about heterogeneity, we're talking about different things. So basically, in the context of this paragraph, right, let's consider Europe. Okay, so Europe is a continent. It's got different sections, right? So previously, before European Union, these different countries had their own political and economic policies. Okay, so this was different, this was different, this was different, this was obviously, right? One continent, different countries or different states, and they had their own economic and political policies. So here in this state, you can say before European Union. Of course, now with Brexit and all that, it's different. But forget that. Before the EU came into picture, this was very heterogeneous because it's different. A, B, and C, D is different, right? Heterogeneous, when you say something is heterogeneous, you're talking about different characteristics, different aspects of one entity. Homogeneous is when they have a common standard, okay? So before EU, they were different, they were heterogeneous. After EU, because it came together, this A, B, and C, these differences were removed, and they had one common currency and they had one common political structure. So it became homogeneous. So when it says lower the heterogeneity, it's talking about lowering the differences. Okay. Okay, great. I know there are many questions here. Folks, Mohan has a good question. Sir, isn't impelled very similar to hastened? Actually, Mohan, impelled doesn't mean hastened. Impelled means driven. Check the meaning of impelled, okay? Impelled basically means that it was driven. So the unification of Germany drove Europe to establish a common currency, or forced Europe to establish a common currency. So impelled doesn't have an aspect of hastening, okay? And you can check that. I know what you mean. That's a very good point. Impelled doesn't have any hastening or speed connotation, okay? It's talking about driving it. All right, okay, just check it out. Anyway, folks, I know, great questions there. We're running out of time, so I'm going to proceed. But remember, yes, this was a difficult one. As I said, the complexity was high. Out of the three, this was the most difficult one. In an exam, you know, obviously we don't have this much time. And again, my explanations are long, but when you're solving it, the more number of questions you solve, this will become very quick for you. But still, this question is difficult, okay? If let's say, you know, this comes to you, this three questions are presented to you, you solve 1 and 2 correctly and you leave this out, it's fine, okay? I would say it would be an intelligent move to leave this question if you're finding it difficult. Of course, based on your reading skills, if you find it that it's easily, you can attempt it within a reasonable amount of time, great. But definitely don't spend 3 to 4 minutes on this question, okay? I would 4 minutes on a para summary question is not recommended. Okay, if it's taking you that long, skip it and focus on other questions. Okay, all right. Forcing and fastening seems to go hand in hand. Mohan, they don't. There is a difference. I know where you're coming from. Forcing is about an external stimuli, an external entity is forcing you to do something. But forcing doesn't have a connotation of speed, right? Hastening is like speeding up. Somebody is forcing you to do it. Okay, so you'll have to do it. Your parents are forcing you to do an MBA. So you'll have to do an MBA. But that doesn't mean you have to hasten the process of an MBA. Doesn't have a speed connotation. Okay? All right. Okay, great. Awesome. So good discussion, folks. Let's move on. Let's move on to parajumbles. We're running out of time. So I'm going to move to parajumbles. Okay. Again, if you have questions that are remaining, I always tell you, feel free to comment on the video and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Any kind of questions, just comment. More than happy to answer it. Okay, let's move on, folks. All right, now we're going to parajumbles. Quickly, I want to just talk about parajumbles and we'll start. Okay, see, we're going to parajumbles now. So parajumbles, by now you should be familiar with what parajumbles are. So you're given 4 options typically. You'll have A, B, C, and D. And you have to rearrange these sentences to form a coherent paragraph. That's what parajumbles is, right? So what the question setters do is, they pick a paragraph from anywhere. It can be the beginning of an article, it can be the ending of an article, it can be the middle of the article as well. They'll pick a paragraph, they'll break it up into 4 sentences, jumble them up and give it to you. And then you have to read the options and you have to give the correct sequence. Okay, so you have to form a coherent paragraph in parajumbles. Okay, and it's a theta question. So theta is what? Type in the answer, right? So there are no options here. You have to type in the sequence yourself, and that's why there is no negative marking. Okay, which is great. The advantage is there is no negative marking. What does it mean? That means you should definitely attempt them. Attempt all of them, even if you have no idea. Just punch in something and come. Okay, because by fluke you might get a correct answer. So there is no negative marks, there is no risk. But because there is no negative marking, these questions are quite complex. They are more difficult than the other questions. Okay, so para summaries are achievable, right? As I said, it's a lucrative option if you follow the correct strategy. But with parajumbles, because it's theta, type in the answer, they're usually quite difficult to crack. Okay, so my suggestion would be, don't spend an unreasonable time on parajumbles. Again, see, this depends. Let's say RC is your weak area. Okay, let's say that's the case, and you decide, okay, I'm going to spend a good amount of time in verbal ability. Then you can decide to spend more time on parajumbles. That's your choice. But let's say if you're decent at RC and you've decided, okay, I'm going to spend 28 to 30 minutes on RCs, and then I'm remaining with 10 minutes for verbal, then you have 10 minutes, you have 8 questions. Okay, so be wise. On parajumbles, don't spend 5 minutes on a parajumble question. Don't spend 4 minutes on a parajumble question. That doesn't make sense. If you're able to crack it, you should be able to crack it within 1 or 2 minutes max. If you're not getting it within 2 minutes, then chances are you won't get it. Okay, because it's complex in that nature. So keep that in mind. Don't spend an unreasonable amount of time on theta questions. They are quite complex. But at the same time, because there's no negative marking, definitely attempt all of them. Okay, don't leave them. Okay, all right, let's move on. Perfect. So this is your question. Read it and then punch in your answer in chat. Just give me 1 second. I will just give this. Actually, you know what? Let me not do this. Oh, sorry. Did I show you the answer? I'm sorry if I showed you the answer. Okay, I'll stick to 1, 2, 3, 4, guys. Just use that for your sequencing and let me know in chat what your answer is. Okay, take about a minute, 2 minutes, and then we'll discuss it. Right, there won't be a poll, folks, because it's theta. So whenever you're ready, you can punch in your answer in chat. But take about a minute, minute and a half. Don't rush. Okay, I'm getting some answers. Take some more time. Punch in your answer. Don't get influenced by what has been mentioned already. Choose your own answers and then we'll discuss it. Yeah, Vignesh, let's stick to 1, 2, 3, 4. Otherwise, it'll be confusing. Interesting. Okay. All right, I'm getting quite a few answers now. I'll give you guys a few more seconds and then we'll start. All right, great. Okay, so I'm getting quite a few answers, and the it's kind of like unanimous. You guys are quite sort of in sync. 1, 3, 2, 4 is what I'm getting a lot. Okay. Then there is 1, 3, 4, 2 as well. Okay, but this is definitely prominent, the most prominent. But I saw 1, 3, 4, 2. And then 1, 3, 2, 4, 1, 3, 2, 4, and 1, 4, 3, 2 as well. Okay, great. Let's discuss this, folks. The most common one that we got was 1, 3, 2, 4 overwhelmingly, and some I saw some 1, 3, 4, 2s and 1, 4, 3, 2s as well. Okay, but all of you seem to agree that we're starting with 1. Okay, interesting. Let's look at this. Okay, it's an interesting one. By the way, don't look at the title. The title is just in the deck to identify questions. In CAT, obviously, you won't have a title. You'll just have 4 sentences. So ignore the title. Don't let the title influence you. You'll never have a title in CAT. Okay. So all of you agree that it should start with 1 is what you're saying. You seem to agree with that, and then there are some differences. Okay. All right. Now, what do we do with parajumbles? The parajumbles, see, there are different strategies. There are different ways in which you can solve this. My recommendation is when you start a parajumble, start reading the sentences, and the first step should be to try and identify the sentence, the first sentence, the starting point of the paragraph. Okay, that should be your first objective. That you have a parajumble question in front of you, start reading, identify the sentence that you think should start the paragraph. Once you have the starting point, it becomes much easier to solve the paragraph. Okay, so that should be your first step. So of course, you start reading and identify the start. While you're reading, you can also keep making links on the side. So while you're identifying your starter sentence, you can keep making your links as well. You've read something and you said, okay, 2 and 1 seems to be a link, 4 and 1 seems to be a link. You can keep making those links and jotting it down on your notepad in the exam. Okay, so you can do this simultaneously. Or what you can do is identify the starter sentence and then go to the next step, which is linking the sentences. Okay, so the first step should be to identify the starter sentence. Now let's look at these and let's see which is the starter sentence here. Okay. Okay. 1. What does it say? Man has used poisons for assassination purposes ever since the dawn of civilization against individual enemies, but also occasionally against armies. Okay, this seems like a pretty generic statement, right? You have generic statements, you have specific statements. Specific statements focus on details. Generally, a starter statement will be general. Okay, see, in a paragraph, in a lot of cases, what happens is the author goes from general to specific. Okay, so they'll start the paragraph with a generic statement and then come down to the details later. So you can keep that in mind when you're doing your parajumble. So this seems like quite a generic statement. It seems like a good candidate for starting the paragraph. So you guys have chosen that. So I can understand why you've chosen it. So let's hold this. Okay. I think this is a good candidate. We'll hold it and we'll see other sentences. These dangers were soon recognized and resulted in 2 international declarations. These dangers, which dangers are we talking about? We don't have any idea now. Okay, it says these dangers. So the fact that it says these dangers right, kind of alludes to the fact that there is something before this, because the paragraph should talk about dangers and then it can say these dangers, right? So we don't know what these dangers are. Now, this doesn't mean that it is 100% that there will be a sentence before two. Because see, remember, the paragraph can be picked from anywhere in the article, right? Let's say there is an article which has sorry about that, okay, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs, okay, and the question setter has picked the third paragraph right from the middle. So the paragraph can start with something like these dangers. Why? Because those dangers were explained in paragraph 2, which is not given to you, right? So you can never be sure, right? I can't say for sure that this can't be a starter sentence, but it's unlikely, okay? So this seems to be unlikely, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a question mark here. 1 second. Because of these dangers. Okay, let's read the third one. The Foundation of Microbiology by Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch offered new prospects for those interested in biological weapons because it allowed agents to be chosen and designed on a rational basis. Okay, all right. It seems like a fairly generic statement. Okay, I don't see any pronouns or any sort of problems that give any sort of words that give me an idea that there is an antecedent or there is a sentence before that. So this, let's hold on to this. Okay, all right, let's go to 4. Though treaties were all made in good faith, they contain no means of control. Though treaties were all made for okay, so it talks about though. The moment you have though is kind of a transition word. Okay, so it sort of gives you an inkling that there is something before that. Okay, so this again is unlikely, but we can't be sure. Now, when you're reading these sentences, you'll probably pick up on the fact that there is some kind of link here. See, what does 2 say? These dangers were soon recognized and resulted in 2 international declarations. Okay, and it talks about the declarations. Though treaties were all made in good faith, they contained no means of control and so failed to prevent interested parties from developing and using biological weapons. Which treaties are they talking about? The treaties are mentioned in 2. The 1874 in Brussels and the 1899 in the Hague. Those are the treaties. So you can see the link, right? This is what I was talking about. So while you're identifying the starter statement, you can identify the links as well. So looks like here that 2 and 4 is a link. I'm not saying it's a sequence. Okay. All I'm saying is that looks like 2 comes before 4. There can be something in the middle. Okay. We don't know. I'm not saying it's a sequence. I'm just saying it's a link at this point in time. We have some bit of an idea that 2 comes before 4. Okay. All right. Now let's look at starter statement. We have 2 statements on hold. We have 1 and 3 which you have put on hold. Which is a better one? Think about it. Now read it and try to analyze which is a better one. Which is more generic? Okay. You'll see 1 talks about used poisons for assassination purposes ever since the dawn of civilization. Very generic. Okay. Here it talks about foundations of microbiology and okay, this is also generic. Now, we've looked at the general specific one. Look at the way it is framed. Ever since the dawn of civilization. Starts from the very beginning. Okay. What can be before dawn of civilization? Nothing. Okay. So in terms of time also, you can see that 1 is a better option because it starts from way behind, from the dawn of civilization. Okay. So we can say that, okay, 1 is our starter statement. It's a great candidate. Between 1 and 3, it looks like a great candidate. So now we have 1, 2 and 4. Okay. Where do we put 3 is the question. We have this link, which is great. Okay. Now we just have to put 3. Okay. Now you have to see where can 3 fit. Okay. Right. Now we have 2 and 4, right? Remember 2 says these dangers. What are these dangers that 2 is talking about? It should be explained somewhere. So let's look at 3. The Foundation of Microbiology by Louis Pasteur and Robert offered new prospects for those interested in biological weapons because it allowed agents to be chosen and designed on a rational basis. So it's talking about some kind of dangers which is being referred to in 2. So we can say that 3 will come in between 1 and 2. Okay, so you guys were right. Most of you got it right. 1, 3, 2, 4 is definitely the sequence here. Okay, and also remember one thing. See, now when you look at the paragraph, it will make sense. It starts by talking about poisons and dawn of civilization. Then 3 talks about a new development. So it says in microbiology, there was a new development and it offered new prospects in this domain. Okay, so the first thing ever since the dawn of civilization, new development. Then it talks about the dangers which were recognized and resulted in 2 treaties, and finally ends by telling you that these treaties had flaws. Okay, and it ends by that. So 1, 3, 2, 4 is the correct option. Okay, great, fantastic. Now, since most of you got it right, we'll move on. Just in terms of strategies, remember, folks. So we're trying to identify the starter statement. That is number 1. While you're doing that, identify links as well. Okay. Remember that paragraphs often go from general to specific. Okay. So you can keep that in mind when you're coming up with the sequence, and also time, right? Dawn of civilization. So way back. So you can look at that time as well, time factor as well, to identify a sequence. So for instance, you won't get an easy paragraph like that, but let's say it's a historical passage and it talks about 1920, 1940, 1950. So obviously you'll have 1920 followed by 40 followed by 50. So keep that time in mind as well, is what I'm saying. Okay, let's move on. Second one, go for it. It's a little tricky now. This one, the first one was quite easy. Not quite easy actually. It was medium difficulty. I'm glad you got that right. Solve this one and then we'll discuss it. Okay, Kamlesh, you have a question. Can you explain the 2-4 link? Unfortunately, I'm running out of time, Kamlesh. So I won't be able to answer the question now. Please, I request you to put a comment on the video after the session ends. You can put it right now as well, and I'll get back to you. Okay. Again, I'm saying just put in your questions. I'm more than happy to engage with you there. I love interaction. Okay. So interaction in class, interaction outside. Just put in your question and we'll discuss it. Okay. Great. Yeah. Go for it, folks. And then we'll discuss this. Okay, answers are coming in. Take 30 more seconds and maybe all of you can give me your answer and then I'll start noting it down. Okay, quite a few. So Shalini, Kritika, Ganesh, Purav, Arti, Manish, Chen, Joshua, all of you have answers. A lot of you. Good, that's good. Take a few more seconds. I'll start noting down in the meantime. Okay, don't get influenced by that. I'm seeing a lot of 3124. Seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing some 3142 as well. Okay, minor change at the end. Okay, I've seen, okay, there is 3241 as well. Okay, and there is 3124, which is a common one. 3214. There is 3214 as well. Okay. All right. Okay. So that pretty much sums it up. All right. Great. So let's discuss this, folks. This is a little trickier than the previous one, but it's manageable. Okay. Let's look at this. So 3124 again. Overwhelmingly, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing 3142, 3241, 3214. But again, you folks are coming kind of again sort of unanimous in the sense that 3 is your starter, right? So let's look at that. If you get the starter right, it's sort of like a great sort of the chances of you getting the parajumble right are very high. If you get the starter wrong, then it's going to be very, very tricky. Obviously, you won't get it right, right? So that should be a first step. Okay, let's look at this. Let's start with the first one. Tensions and sometimes conflict remain an issue in and between the 11 states in Southeast Asia. And then it talks about the states. See, when you're reading these sentences, right, you can scan these sentences. So the first time when you're reading it, yes, I would say read the whole sentence, but scan it. Because what is your first objective? Your first objective is to identify the starter. Okay. Even if you read the sentence carefully the first time, you might not be able to make sense out of it because it's all jumbled up. Right, that meaning will become clearer later. So first time I would say do a quick scan of the sentence. Okay, and then you'll have to probably go back in the next round and then read those sentences carefully. Okay, so tensions and sometimes conflict remain an issue in between the 11 states in Southeast Asia. Okay, then it names the states. Can this be a starter? It's a I mean it's okay. It's although it talks about specifically about the 11 states in Southeast Asia, it gives you details. It's a lot of details, right? Quite a lot of detail here, right? Generally, the starter statement is generic, okay? But okay, we'll hold on. We'll mark a question mark here, okay? There is detail, but it's okay. It's still a general statement. It can be a starter. We'll see. Okay, let's look at 2. China's rise as a regional military power and its claims in the South China Sea have become an increasingly pressing security concern for many Southeast Asian states. So it talks about a specific security concern, okay, which is China's rise. Okay, now if you look at the first one, it says tensions and sometimes conflict remain an issue. It's a very generic sort of idea of what kind of conflict between these states. This is talking about a very specific conflict, okay, which is China's rise. So unlikely, again, very specific, unlikely to be your starter. Okay, let's look at this. Let's see if there's a better option. Since the 1990s, the security environment of Southeast Asia has seen both continuity and profound changes. Okay, quite generic statement. Just says that security environment has seen both continuity and profound changes. It doesn't even tell you positive changes, negative changes. It's a very generic statement. Very, very general. It also has since the 1990s. So starting from the past. Okay. This is a good candidate for your starter. Better than 1 and 2. Okay. These concerns, okay. This is it gets caught here, right? But again, remember, just because it has these, don't rule it out as a starter. Okay. Because it can be picked from that. The context can come from a previous paragraph. So don't fall for this. But unlikely. These concerns cause states from outside the region to take an active interest in SCA, Southeast Asian security. Very unlikely. Okay, so we have 3 unlikely. We have a 1 which is fairly general. So 3 is a great candidate for starting. Okay, because general, it starts from 1990s. Okay, all right. Now it says since the 1990s, the security environment of Southeast Asia has seen both continuity and profound changes. Okay, what kind of changes? We don't know. So we know by reading other sentences, it talks about the security concerns in Southeast Asia, right? This talks about a concern, right? This is also a concern, right? Concern in security, concern with security. So looks like that 2 and 1 will follow 3, right? Because they talk about concerns. 3 just says changes. Then 1 and 2 give you concerns. And then 4 says these concerns cause states from outside the region to take an active interest. So we have concerns, and then what happens because of those concerns. You get that link? Okay. So looks like 1 and 2 have concerns, and then 4 talks about what happens because of the concerns. So it's likely that 4 will come after 1 and 2. Okay. Right. So we have 4 which will come after 1 and 2. But at this point in time, we don't know what is the sequence of 1, 2. But we know that 4 will come after 1 and 2. Okay. So we have a starter. Okay. We're saying 4 will come after 1 and 2. That means 4 is going to be the end. Now you're just remaining with what to do with 1 and 2. Okay. So whether it's 1, 2 or whether it is 2, 1. Okay. Is what we have to understand. Okay. So what does it say? Since the 90s, the security environment has seen both continuity and profound changes. Tensions and sometimes conflict remain an issue in between the 11 states in Southeast Asia. And then it talks about China's rise as a military power, and its claims have become an increasingly pressing security concern. Okay, what do you think will come first? See, here it talks about Southeast Asia. Then 1 actually talks about the states in Southeast Asia. So it's going from general to specific. 2 doesn't talk about that. 1 clearly tells you, okay, these are the 11 states in Southeast Asia. It names them and tells you this is the conflict within them. Okay. And then it goes to the China one. So it's likely that 1 will come before. So before 2. Because 1 is kind of connected to 3. 3 talks about Southeast Asia. 1 gives you the breakup of Southeast Asia. So it's a good sort of sequence. Also, you can take it in another way. See, it talks about both continuity and profound changes. So security environment has some kind of continuity, and then there are changes. So you can say that the continuity is being spoken about in 1, where the conflicts remain. Okay. And the changes is spoken about in 2, which is China's rise as a regional military power has become an increasingly pressing security concern. So you can take it that way as well. Okay. The continuity part is mentioned in 1. The change concern is mentioned in 2. So you have 3, 1, 2, and then finally, what do the concerns do? They cause this. So it should be 3, 1, 2. Okay. Most of you got it right. And the ones that didn't get it correct, I hope it's clear. In the interest of time, let's move on. Let's look at the third question. Okay. All right. Go for this one. Yeah. So now this is the trickiest one out of the para-jumbles that we had in slot 1, because the text, as you will see, is a little twisted. It's kind of like it's a little difficult to understand the text. So take your time, and we'll discuss this. All right, folks, take 30 more seconds, but I'll start noting down the answers that I'm seeing. Don't get influenced by that. All right. Okay. Great. Let's discuss this. Okay. Okay. So this is where, as I said, it's a little tricky, and then this for the first time there are options where the starter statement is different. Okay. Previously, as you saw, you were able to sort of have a consensus on the starter statement, but here we have a difference of opinion. Okay. Where some of you are saying that 1 is the starter, some of you are saying that 3 is a starter. So let's figure that out, because that's very important, right? To figure out the starter statement. Okay, what does it say? Relying on narrative structure alone, indigenous significances of 19th century sand folktales are hard to determine. Okay, see, as you will read these sentences, you will see they're a little complex to understand. Okay. When you find such a para-jumble where you're finding the statements complex to understand, don't spend a lot of time to understand each and every detail. That is not recommended. Okay, just get the idea. Anyway, you're not supposed to spend an inordinate amount of time on a para-jumble. You've identified it's a tricky one because the content is difficult to understand. So start looking at clues, start looking at pronouns, your strategies and stuff like that. Don't spend too much time to understand each and every word of that sentence. Okay, don't do that, right? Read the sentence once properly, just get some idea of it and move on if you're finding it complex, because we have to attempt theta, we don't leave theta, but don't spend too much time if I'm finding the content complex. Look for clues instead. Okay. All right. Relying on narrative structure alone, indigenous significances of 19th century sand folk tales are hard to determine. Okay, so it's talks about sand folk tales. Fairly generic statement, right? I don't see any sort of like connector words or no clues that there is an antecedent or a sentence before this. This is a fairly good starter, so I'm going to hold on to it. Okay, using their supernatural potency, benign shamans transcend the levels of sand cosmos in order. Okay, so the there is connected to shamans. That's okay, right? If you read the sentence, you read the sentence, that there talks about shaman, so that's fine. It sort of like explains that in the sentence itself. But what does it say? Using the supernatural potency, benign shamans transcend the levels of sand cosmos in order to deal with social conflict and to protect material resources. Okay, so it's a pretty complex statement to understand. Doesn't look like a starter statement because it's quite specific. Okay, it talks about a very specific aspect. Doesn't look like a starter statement. We need a more general one. Selected tales reveal that they deal with a form of spiritual conflict that has social implications and concern conflict between people and living or dead malevolent shamans. Okay, selected tales reveal that they deal with. Okay, so the tales deal with. All right, so it's talking about certain tales, certain selected tales. Okay, fairly generic. We can hold on to this. Okay, meaning can be elicited and the tales contextualized by probing beneath the narrative of verbatim. One sec, sorry about this. Okay, narrative of verbatim, original language records, and exploring the connotations of highly significant words and phrases. Okay, all right. Now let's look at the starter. We have 1 and 3, which are two options for starting, and as you see, you've chosen that as well. Okay, which is a better one? See, there is a clue here. What does 1 say? 19th century sand folktales. It talks about the folktales and it gives you a description of these folktales. 19th century sand folktales. It gives you the name also. It gives you the name of these folktales, right? Okay, so it introduces the folktales to you. 19th century sand folktales. 3 just mentions selected tales. Okay, but where have the tails been introduced? The tails were introduced to you in 1. Okay, so that's why 1 is a better candidate than 3, because 1 gives you the full name, the full description. 3 just talks about tails. Now, this is another strategy that you can keep in mind for parajumbles. Okay, you'll have they do that with people as well in paragraphs. They'll have the full name. Okay, one sentence will say, okay, Joseph D'Souza. Okay, and then the next sentence will say just Joseph or just D'Souza. So which is the first one? Obviously the sentence that has a full name, because it introduces the character Joseph D'Souza, and then in subsequent sentences it just takes the first name or the last name. So that's a clue here. Okay, Sand folk tales, 19th century Sand folk tales is much more descriptive than just tales. Okay, so that's why 1 is a better candidate for a start. Okay, now there is a link here as well. What does 1 say? Relying on narrative structure alone, indigenous significances are hard to determine. Okay, so it's saying that, okay, these are tales which are written documents. Just by relying on the narrative structure, it's hard to determine something. It's hard to determine the significances just by relying on narrative structure. What does 4 say? Meaning can be elicited and the tales contextualized by probing beneath the narrative of verbatim. So it's connected to that. 1 talks about just relying on narrative structure alone. It makes it hard to determine. 2 says meaning can be elicited if you go beyond the narrative structure and focus on other things. Okay, that's why there is a link. 1 and 4 is definitely a link. 1 says meaning is hard to determine. 4 says meaning can be elicited if you go beyond the narrative structure. The narrative structure is a link there. Okay, so 1 and 4 is a good link. Okay, we don't know whether it's a sequence, but it's a good link. Okay, all right. Now we're remaining with fine. So it says meaning can be. So 1 says it's hard to determine. 4 says meaning can be elicited if you go a certain way. Selected tales reveal that they deal with a form of spiritual conflict that has social implications and concern conflict between people and living or dead malevolent shamans. Using their supernatural potency, benign shamans transcend the levels in order to deal with social conflict. Okay, now here we're remaining with 3 and 2. 1 and 4 is definitely a sequence. Now we're remaining with 3 and 2. It can be either 3-2 or it can be 2-3. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so we have 1 and 4. Now we're left with 2 and 3. So it can be either 2-3 or 3-2. Now how do we pick? Okay, what does 3 say? Selected tales reveal that they deal with a form of spiritual conflict that has social implications. So it talks about a certain conflict that has social implications. 2 says, using their supernatural potency, benign shamans transcend the levels of the sand cosmos in order to deal with the social conflict. Okay, so 3 talks about the conflict and 2 says this is how they dealt with it. Okay, that is one way of going about it. So that's the kind of a sequence that will tell you that the conflict is introduced and then finally 2 tells you that this is how the conflict is dealt with. That's why 1432 is 3-2 is a better combination. That's one link. The second one is also, here it talks about selected tales. Okay, so see, look at the sequence. Difficult to determine meaning or indigenous significances. Meaning can be elicited, okay, by going beyond the narrative structure, and then it talks about specific tales which deal with a form of spiritual conflict. Okay, so again, if you look at the tales part as well, 4 and 3 is a better link. Okay, so look at that, or look at the fact that it introduces a conflict and then it talks about how they deal with that conflict. So that's why your answer is 1432. Okay, now this is a classic example of a question, folks, where you might not understand each and every word of the sentence. You don't have to. In these cases, look for clues. First of all, look for your starter statement, look for your clues, punch in your answer and move on. Okay, for complex parajumbles, don't spend an inordinate amount of time on that, because if you're not getting the meaning of those sentences, it's going to be difficult to crack it. Okay, so look for clues, solve it and move on. Okay, great. Now I've run out of time, folks, so I'm going to end it here. I know we have 2 odd ones out remaining. We will cover that in the next session. which will happen next Friday. Before I go, couple of quick things. If you like this session, please hit like. Okay, it's great for my ego. Number one, I monitor it, so it's great. But the most important reason is that if you like this video, it will be exposed to more students, and more students can get value out of it. Okay, that's how the YouTube algorithm works. So please make sure to like it if you like the content. Subscribe to our channel, and questions. Okay, if you have any questions, put that in the comment section, and I'll make sure to get back to you. Okay, all right. So I'll see you in the next session where we'll finish the 2 odd ones out, and then we'll do slot 2 verbal ability in the next session on Friday. Okay, thank you very much, and I will see you next week. Take care.